This is the story of one man's obsessive desire to control and even kill women. Throughout his life, John Taylor found himself repeatedly drawn to woods where he would watch and wait for his next victim.
He had the chance to do it to me, but he didn't have to do it to that lass. He had to do it to Leanne.
But John Taylor's crimes went undetected for more than a decade, until he kidnapped and killed 16-year-old Leanne Tiernan.
Where they found Leanne, just over this little brown hair, brings back a lot of memories.
It was only when he was convicted of murdering Leanne that Taylor's secret life came to light.
I believe that John Taylor is an extremely dangerous man. No stone will be left unturned as far as John Taylor's concerned.
On a Sunday afternoon in November 2000, teenagers Leanne Tiernan and her friend Sarah Whitehouse went on a Christmas shopping trip to Leeds city centre.
We've been shopping and we were having a laugh about boyfriends, usual stuff. Leanne, she was very generous. She spent her last money on me. She borrowed the money so she could get my Christmas presents. It was a day to remember because at least we weren't sad. But we're a happy day. We had to be home by about 5 o'clock because Leanne's mum had a tea waiting for her. And we'd made plans for that evening anyway.
The girls boarded the bus for the 3-mile journey home. What they didn't know was that just round the corner from Leanne's house, a man was setting out on a more sinister journey. The girls got off the bus and said goodbye. Instead of walking home along the main road, Leanne took a shortcut through a wooded valley called Huffley Gill. She was just a few minutes from home.
Phone went at 5:20, so I answered it, thinking it was possibly Leanne saying that she might be a bit late. And it was actually Sarah wanting to speak to Leanne. So she says, oh, she's not back yet. So I phoned her mobile and it rang on about 20 times and it just cut off. So I thought, little trollop, she's ignoring me for some reason, so I tried it again.
Hi, it's Leanne. I can't get to the phone right now. Call back later. Bye.
That's when it really hits you then, when you suddenly get a policeman in your house and you're actually having to say that your daughter's missing and you don't know why or where she is.
The search started immediately. Leanne was a popular girl, and as word spread round the neighbourhood that she was missing, her friends all joined in the hunt.
She was the nuttiest person you could ever met. Just before Leanne went missing, we went to Turkey in the summer. It's sort of like the biggest last memory that I had of her was 2 weeks abroad, having a good old time. No. She was my best friend. She had like a gift. Like a big sunshine.
Hello! Welcome to my talk show in Turkey.
The police are used to dealing with missing girls, but this was different. Although Leanne's parents were divorced, her home life was happy, and there was nothing in her background to convince the police that she'd run away.
We used to sort of call ourselves the Three Musketeers because there were just the three of us. We used to have the music on and dance and just be silly. The last memory of Leanne I have is when she was setting off to go shopping and she kissed me on the cheek and she laughed because she got lipstick on me again. And she was always doing that. And I sort of went, oh, and rubbed it off. And she walked out the back door, she just said bye. And I said bye back and I said, don't be late for your dinner. and she was gone.
Girls disappear regularly and thankfully are safely found. And we realise from past experience with cases that you can't afford delay. If you are hoping that there's going to be a successful outcome, you've got to act quickly.
The first priority for the police was to isolate and search every inch of Leanne's intended journey home.
Leanne was last seen in Huffley Lane near to Wither Park Road. She lived some 3/4 of a mile away at Landsteer Mount. Now, we had to calculate what we would have expected the route to be that she walked, and we call that the red route. The houses along that red route were searched, some 1,200 houses. It was a logistical problem to make sure that all these areas were searched thoroughly, because we didn't know at which point along this route she'd actually been abducted.
Detective Superintendent Gregg called in experts in criminal behaviour from the National Crime Faculty. The investigation was soon centred on the shortcut through Huffley Gill.
When I first visited Huffley Gill, it just strikes you as an awful place to be. It's shrouded by bushes and overgrown on both sides, and it's one of those places that I suppose most people would try and avoid unless they had reason to go there.
The Gill may have been deserted, but it was a daring choice of location for a kidnap.
Huffley Gill itself is surrounded by housing. Regardless of which direction you move away from Huffley Gill, you're straight into residential area. It's a very high-risk location for an abduction.
But no one had seen anything, and with every hour that passed, hopes of seeing Leanne alive again were slipping away.
If you were to look at the chances of a 16-year-old female disappearing and being found alive, having not been found within the first 48 hours, then statistically there's a high likelihood that she has actually been murdered.
Leanne Tiernan had been missing for 48 hours. 200 officers were working on one of West Yorkshire's biggest ever police operations.
A case like this lives with you 24 hours a day. You're trying to think what has happened to this girl, and all these things are constantly turning over in your mind.
In a desperate attempt to jog people's memories, the police staged a reconstruction of Leanne's last movements. Her sister Michelle played the part of Leanne.
I did the reconstruction because I just wanted to help. Ended up getting off the 16 bus where she would have normally got off with Sarah, and then I've just followed the route she would have normally taken. I think we were clutching at straws, but we were kind of hoping that she had run away and nothing bad had happened, even though it was so out of character for her.
The police were treating it as a Category A incident, the most serious they deal with. Leanne's family couldn't just stand by and watch. They too wanted to play a part in bringing their daughter home alive.
There were times when we were feeling pretty much down that she may have been taken and killed, but we really couldn't let ourselves or allow ourselves to believe that. Every day when you don't know, you wake up and wonder, is she going to be coming home today?
All of a sudden you're getting pulled in to do press things. You're being questioned by the police because you're all suspects, friends, family, everybody's a suspect. And it's a total nightmare, really.
There were times when we were just driving, I'd see a girl of her size and frame. You look and you think, could that be Leanne? And realise that it's not. It's a bit silly, I suppose, but it still happens.
They even combed the local red light areas in the desperate belief that she may have been lured into prostitution.
Maybe as somebody kidnapped her because you hear about them getting drugged and then they have to go out on the streets to pay back all the time and they get addicted and they have to keep going. And for some reason that was a thought that was just stuck in my head all the time.
We made ourselves believe that she was still alive. When you don't know, you've got to keep on trying, you can't give up hope.
In the days and weeks after Leanne's disappearance, the police searched 1,600 buildings and acres of parks and woodlands, but there wasn't a single sighting or a shred of evidence of what had happened to her. The trail had gone cold, and Leanne seemed to have vanished into thin air. Nine months passed with no news. Then a man walking his dogs in a forest in the Yorkshire Dales made a terrible discovery.
I was walking through the woods when I saw this package. So I stopped and investigated it. And I wasn't quite sure what to make of it, really. It looked like, well, there was this bag in a duvet cover. I noticed then that there was a kind of shallow grave dug around it. So I went to see the police. As the policeman cut down the bag, I saw a sock, and I realised then that we'd actually found a body.
I got the call in the afternoon, and I was told that a girl's body had been found at Lindley Woods. My immediate thoughts were, is this Leanne?
Leanne had finally been found. Her body had been wrapped in bin liners and a duvet cover.
There's no easy way to explain to the parents of a child the details in circumstances like this as to how they've died and the way that the body has been found. But I took the view that they need to know, and they will be told, and I'll be the person who explains it to them.
Got a telephone call from the police to say that they'd found a body in North Yorkshire.
I can't really remember much about the point when the police actually came to tell us about it all.
I got a phone call from my mum saying, I think you better come home, I think they've found something. It hit my mum then, because she burst into tears in the garden, so I had to sort of like walk her in.
It's like watching TV and it's happening to somebody else. It just feels so unreal. It don't feel like it's you that's sitting there.
At the time when they first found out, they couldn't really tell us exactly how she died, but they said that it looked like strangulation.
Leanne had been strangled with a plastic cable tie, which had been left in place around her neck. And there were cable ties binding her hands behind her back. A bag over her head had been secured with a dog collar and a scarf. Ordinary household items put to the most sinister purpose.
Forensically, it's almost like an Aladdin's cave. In this case, you had 6, 7, 8 different items, all of which could give some sort of potential investigative direction. Any one of those could lead to the offender.
It was important that each of these items that was found on her was investigated thoroughly, because until you actually start investigating, you don't know where this is going to lead. A pair of detectives was tasked with finding out as much as they possibly could about the cable ties. One of the cable ties in particular was more significant than the others. But each cable tie had a manufacturer's number stamped into it, and one of them we found was exclusively supplied to the Royal Mail. So we were considering carefully, is there a Royal Mail connection to the person who's done this? The other item that was found on Leanne's back was a small twist of red carpet fibre. It was something that we couldn't afford to get into the public eye, and we knew that if we got into the right house and the carpet was still down, it could be a vital breakthrough for us. The duvet cover was a floral design. We had a lady who, 7 days before Leanne's body was found, she was driving past Lindley Woods with her husband and saw a man lifting out what she thought was a bundle of rags from a car boot. And she described it being a floral bundle. And she thought, I hope that man's not going to go and dump those rags in the woods. We don't believe it was a bundle of rags. We believe that was Leanne's body.
The most difficult challenge facing the police was trying to trace the unmarked dog collar.
The detectives were tasked with ringing over 200 outlets. And of course, with a dog collar off the shelf, customer details records generally aren't kept. But we considered it a useful line of inquiry just in case one of them did have any records. It was not an enjoyable task, I'm sure, but it turned out to be the crucial task.
The police knew it could take months or even years to track down Leanne's killer. Her family faced a more immediate task, saying their final goodbyes.
It was just a celebration of Leanne's life as opposed to a morbid funeral, because Leanne wasn't a morbid person. She was really vibrant and full of everything.
For someone to be taken away from you, it's just a big smack in the face, really. You read it and you watch it every day. It's like, no, that won't happen to me. And it does. It does happen.
Choosing flowers for your own daughter's funeral is the hardest thing in the world. You know that these flowers will be going on your daughter's coffin. I feel angry at just the fact that she's gone, but it's a feeling of missing her.
Leanne, so young, such a beauty, she lit up our lives like the sun. Taken so cruelly before her time, how could this bad deed be done? A girl of 16 summers, her whole life about to begin. Taken so swiftly before her time, the result of a terrible sin. So, Lord, we ask for assistance in light of this hideous crime. Ensure that justice can be done and the culprit serves their time. Your eyes, they shone like diamonds. In our hearts you'll always remain. Leanne, we love you and miss you. One day we'll be with you again. Leanne, forever we love you. One day we'll be with you again.
The hunt for Leanne's killer was becoming increasingly urgent. Scientific tests confirmed the police's worst fears. For the last 9 months, her killer had kept her body somewhere very cold, possibly even a freezer.
I think there was a great deal of fear during the investigation, particularly given that there'd been a 9-month gap before we'd actually discovered the body, of what else could this person have done or be about to do. And once it appeared that that body had been moved from one location, probably a freezer, to Linley Woods, then there was a suggestion that has this body been moved so that there's now room for another victim?
For the detectives trying to catch Leanne's killer, one question dominated their thoughts.
When Leanne's body was found, we wondered why Lindley Woods. To us, there must have been some significance to that. It wasn't coincidence that Leanne's body had been taken up to Lindley Woods. Her body could have been disposed of anywhere in the Bramley area. Bramley Falls area, where it's a large wooded area, that would have been an ideal place we would have expected Leanne's body to have been taken and disposed of. Spring Wood, railway tunnel, all these places would have been a good place for a killer to dispose of a body. But no, the person who'd killed Leanne wanted to take her to Lindley Woods. Travel 16 miles to take her body there.
Offenders don't just pick random locations when they choose to put a body away from where it's been murdered. They go to places that they're comfortable in, that they're familiar with. That starts to reinforce the idea that there is a strong association to Linley Woods.
What I would ask is for people to concentrate their minds on Lindley Woods What we'd certainly suggest is that Leanne's body has not been left there at random. The person who will have left her body there will be familiar with that location. If anyone has a grain of suspicion as to who's done this, we need to hear from them.
Single mum Deborah Benjamin heard the police appeals about the woods and remembered being taken there by a man she'd met through a Lonely Hearts ad.
I'd placed an advert in local paper explaining that I was blonde-haired as lies, 5'8", outgoing, like the outdoors, and then I received 2 replies, and one was from a man called John. We used to go out doing a bit of game shooting and rabbiting. We used to go do a bit of fishing in the stream, and that was up at Lindley Woods itself. It was on papers and police and people were talking about it. I thought, oh yeah, we used to go there. No went through my mind as such at the time. We used to go all over, so I thought nothing of it.
Someone else who knew of a connection to Lindley Woods was Michael Harding, who'd been going there since he was a boy.
I joined the Boys Brigade when I was 9-year-old, and there was a lad that used to come with us, an officer in the Boys Brigade. So obviously we all sort of like looked up to him. We'd come camping here, we'd come on a Friday night at tea time, sleep overnight, and then we'd go for a walk around the Lindley Wood area on the morning. I'd say it was between 150 and 200 yards from where Leanne Tiernan's body were found. At this time, I'd said to my wife, I bet it's that fruitcake sort of thing, but obviously not, not knowing, and I just, simply forgot about it.
But both Deborah and Mike kept their thoughts to themselves, leaving the police still looking for a breakthrough.
During the investigation after Leanne's body had been found, we had 400 names of people who we were intending to interview as potential suspects.
They had a long list of people they needed to eliminate, but no prime suspects until late one Friday afternoon.
The pieces of the jigsaw were there. We needed the individual's name. That came with the breakthrough with the dog collar.
Just let me get a pencil and get some details from you.
The detectives who'd found out the manufacturer of the dog collar were now trying to trace who it had been sold to.
We asked Armitage to supply us with a list of every retailer that they supplied that model dog collar to. We spoke to people from Land's End to the north of Scotland, to small pet shops and to large retail outlets.
The search was long and frustrating. Few shops kept records of individual customers, but one, an internet supplier from Liverpool, sent a list to DC Wilson. As he went down the list, one name stood out. A man living not far from Leanne's home who'd bought 6 collars identical to the one around her neck.
I saw that from Bramley area in Leeds, some 3/4 of a mile away from where Leanne disappeared, was a name John Taylor.
Immediately the team ran a check on the name.
The name John Taylor was the person who the Lonely Hearts lady had rung in had mentioned about poaching in Lindley Woods when he was a lad. We found out that John Taylor worked for Parcel Force, which was one of the Royal Mail companies, and we had a Royal Mail connection with the cable ties. He lived in Bramley. He'd lived there all his life. He was living just over half a mile from where Leanne had been last seen. This was a person who now was emerging to us as a very, very interesting suspect.
The police had a prime suspect for the murder of Leanne Tiernan. John Taylor lived less than a mile from Huffley Gill, where she was last seen alive. This is the video police shot as they first entered his house. It was a scene of squalor. The house was filthy. All the carpets had been ripped up. On the kitchen surface was a newspaper with a headline about Leanne. There was animal hair and mess everywhere, but no sign of any pets. When the police started to excavate the garden, they found it was full of dead animals. But could they link Taylor to the clues found on Leanne's body?
Over the course of days and weeks that we were doing the search, we found carpet fibres. Carpet fibres turned out to match the carpet fibres that were found on Leanne's back. We found dog collars that matched the type of dog collar that was around Leanne's neck. We also found amongst the pallets in the gardens used cable ties that, when they were examined closely, matched the type of cable ties that had been around Leanne's wrists, and also one that had been used as ligature around Leanne's neck.
Having searched his house, now the police needed to get inside Taylor's mind.
Now it was a case of digging into his background, finding out as much as we could about who this character is. We knew nothing about him, and we had to start piecing together what made this person tick. What was his life? We knew he lived alone, we knew he'd been married and had a grown-up family, and he'd been on his own for several years.
The police discovered that Taylor had been a regular user of Lonely Hearts ads. Detectives used his phone bills to identify the women he'd met on the singles scene. Deborah Benjamin had been his lover and shared his house.
We was dating each other, and then a few weeks later I thought we'd get on good and that lot, and he asked me to move in with him. So I moved into his house. A couple of months after I'd moved in, and he just started to change and demanding this, demanding that. He wanted me to wear more skirts and more blouses. Become more feminine, really, which it's not me.
But Taylor's demands didn't stop there.
The sexual side of things, well, there was none, really. What he did, it was just sickening. He got his kicks out of being sadistic and tying up, basically.
What did he want to tie you up with?
Cable ties. The cable ties was in his drawer, loose. There were bundles of different colours, different lengths. They were at hand when he needed them. Yeah, he wouldn't stop. Felt as if I just felt like rape.
Deborah had no idea that Taylor was capable of murder until she heard from the police.
2 detectives were knocking at my door, and they mentioned his name, and I asked what it was about, and then they asked me to describe how he tied me, in which way he tied me, which I told him he one cable tie on each hand, wrist, behind my back with another cable tie tucked in between, joined in the middle.
It did turn out that the configuration of the cable ties that Taylor used to tie the lady with was exactly the same way as Leanne had been tied with. Now that to us confirmed categorically that we were onto the right person here and that Taylor was responsible for Leanne's murder.
Taylor was arrested and brought in for questioning.
Can you tell me how often you visited Huffley Gill?
I won't have been down there for years.
Okay.
It's not somewhere I used to go, certainly not toward the dog or any other reason.
When he was first questioned, he denied any knowledge of being involved in Leanne's disappearance. What he told us had happened was that he'd been to Huffley Gill for the first time that Sunday and was carrying a dog lead. And while he was there, a girl had come walking down the gill. He said the girl walked past him. He turned round and grabbed her and told her not to scream. He said that he tied the girl's hands behind her back with the dog lead and then walked her back to his house, which is over half a mile. When he got back to the house, he explained that he'd taken her up to the bedroom, he'd heard her phone ringing, and asked her which buttons he needed to turn the phone off, and she, clearly terrified at this point, had told him. So he turned the phone off. That's when her mother would have been trying to ring her. He then describes a struggle taking place between himself and Leanne falling from the bed and banging her head.
But John Taylor couldn't explain why Leanne was found with a cable tie and a scarf knotted round her neck. It wasn't until the first day of his trial that he admitted murdering Leanne. the judge described him as a dangerous sexual sadist. By pleading guilty, Taylor avoided having to say what really went on in the house. As he left for Wakefield Prison to serve his 2 life sentences, he took his secrets with him. For Leanne's family, every day is a reminder of what Taylor has taken from them.
Just seems like yesterday to me. Only 2 minutes ago she was here with us. I just see a big smile she always had. That's how I see her still. This is the actual spot where she was found.
It's nice to come in and have a look at things. I know they're still here. This is the actual bedding that she had on the bed, actually, when she went missing. I've not had this back long. The police have had it, obviously, for forensics, and got big holes in it, and I actually got this as part of her 16th birthday. I'm not throwing it away. I just feel a bit closer to her sometimes.
I remember it being really, really quiet. Little robin come off a tree, it was so chirpy. And the strange thing is that sometime after we were talking about it to relatives and friends who had also been here, they'd also seen this robin that's seen, and they all commented on it, saying how chirpy this robin was. It was as if it was telling us something.
Sort of imagine her, how she used to look when she was curled up in bed. But she was always cold. I always had to go in and rub her back when she went to bed to warm her up a bit. It just sort of, I don't know, just something that keeps you a little bit closer to her. She was lovely. For my little baby.
The murder of Leanne was John Taylor's first criminal conviction, but the premeditated nature and violence of the attack suggested to the police that this was not his only offence.
It would be very easy to now put John Taylor to one side and forget about him. He's serving 2 life sentences. But we're trying to piece together what he's possibly done before that and since.
People that carry out these sort of offences tend to have a criminal background, tend to be people that are known to police, tend to be people that will be on the initial list of potential suspects when it's discovered that there's a murder. John Taylor doesn't really fit that mould. He's someone that has a family background, that has children, that at least on the surface appears to have maintained a relatively normal family life. He's someone that has clearly got to a particular stage in life and has committed this offence, but the trail that is usually left that leads up to that event is simply not there, or was simply not there in police records.
The police returned to Taylor's house looking for clues to other crimes he could have committed. They took up the floorboards in his bedroom to see if they could find DNA traces of any other victims he might have killed there. A necklace found in the boot of his car provided hope of a breakthrough, but tests for DNA failed to provide anything positive. The woman who wore this necklace has never been traced. Taylor's former friends gave them more evidence of his callous nature. The police already knew the pets buried in his garden had been killed with a meat cleaver. Now they found out about his extreme methods of poaching.
He decided that we were going to go to Paley Bridge one night and kill a sheep. John drove at the sheep. His head was stuck out on the right-hand side of the road. He hit the sheep's back end and its head hit the dawn and fell in the ditch. Got out of the car, put the sheep in the back of the car and took it back to his house, where next morning he took the sheep out and took it into his bathroom, put it in his bath and skinned it and gutted it in his bathroom.
The more the police learned about Taylor, the more they were convinced that Leanne wasn't his first victim. They began reinvestigating unsolved attacks on women.
We know that John Taylor has committed one murder. We're here to find out whether he's committed others, but my instinct is that this man is certainly capable of committing the most serious of offences.
Four months after John Taylor was imprisoned for life, he was brought out of jail to face more questioning. The police wanted to talk to him about 2 unsolved rapes. The attacks happened in the late 1980s. Had John Taylor's reign of terror lasted more than a decade? The whole team was standing by. They had Taylor's entire life mapped out so they could check out any alibis he might come up with. The day had been planned in minute detail. The same detectives who quizzed Taylor about Leanne were selected to question him on the rapes.
Yes, they are.
So this is a big day. There's been an enormous amount of work being done up to present. A lot of time has been spent going back 14 years, liaising with the forensic laboratory, speaking to detectives who were involved in the original inquiry. And today's the day that we've got Taylor here, and we need to put some questions to him. We'd like to think we can get him talking and get some questions answered on behalf of the victims.
If we can clear up even one other offence that he's committed, it's putting one person's life possibly back in some kind of order. We have to start somewhere when we're looking at what other offences he may have committed. And the natural place we felt we should start is in Bramley itself and Huffley Gill.
The detectives had reinvestigated scores of attacks. 2 rapes stood out. They'd taken place near Huffley Gill, the very same spot where Leanne had been kidnapped.
When we questioned John Taylor regarding the murder of Leanne, he initially told us that was the first time he'd been into Huffley Gill. We strongly believe that isn't the case.
Previously, all the police had to go on was the artist's impression of the rapist. Now scientists use the latest DNA techniques to test samples taken from the victims 14 years earlier. The results matched Taylor's own DNA. In the first attack, Taylor had struck within yards of where Leanne had been pounced on.
I left to walk to school to pick my daughter up. I was going to cut across the gill. I'd only taken about 4 or 5 steps when I was grabbed from behind. He pulled a knife out. He then said, "Lay down flat," so I lay down. He still had the knife in his right hand.
On the second occasion, he'd broken into a woman's house near Huffley Gill in the middle of the afternoon.
I saw a tall man wearing a black mask over his face and a knife in his hand. By this time, my daughter had started crying. He started to take my cardigan off. I thought in my mind that this man wasn't just a burglar. He said that he went to different parts of the country and did the same thing to other women.
John Taylor lied in many respects in relation to Leanne's kidnap and murder. So we take the view that why should he now suddenly start telling the truth about other matters if he is involved in them?
Despite the DNA evidence that showed there was just a 1 in a billion chance he was not responsible, Taylor denied being the Huffley Gill rapist. He was charged with both offences and returned to his prison cell. There were 14 years between the rapes and the murder of Leanne. Were these isolated incidents in Taylor's life or part of a series of terrible crimes?
When you look at where John Taylor has offended or where we know he's offended, it's interesting that Huffley Gill appears again, and it comes back to the idea of familiarity and of comfort. By extension, you would need to consider other locations that are significant to John Taylor. So, for example, you know that Linley Woods obviously forms a strong part of his geography, somewhere that he's chosen to take Leanne's body.
Linley Woods could hold the key to more of Taylor's secrets. In 1992, another woman's body was found in the woods just yards from Leanne's shallow grave. It was Yvonne Fitt who'd disappeared from Bradford. Yvonne's murderer had brought her body 12 miles in order to leave it there.
Is it just coincidence that two female bodies have turned up in the same woods? Or is it more than that? Clearly, we've got to look very carefully at that particular crime. And we've got to make sure that if there is any evidence whatsoever there to be found to connect or otherwise tailor to that crime, then we've got to investigate it.
Like other killers, Taylor wanted the comfort of familiar surroundings. Were there other places he might have visited? When Taylor first started poaching, it was this man who showed him where to go. It seems that Taylor's hunting ground extended beyond the familiar haunts of Huffley Gill and Linley Woods.
Some of the places where I've seen John Taylor, he could go from break of dawn till end at night without being seen if he just took to paths and railway lines. You just never ever saw him with anybody. He was always on his own. If I were walking up one part of old railway line, he'd be walking towards me and then he'd just turn around and disappear. Go mooching. Mooching's what you call just walking round alt woods, following alt tracks. John Taylor were rubbish at poaching. Me and my brother would go out and get 700 rabbits. He'd go out and get 4 or 5. What his mind were really on. Were he looking out for his next victim? I've seen John Taylor rabbiting on railway bankings round there, over near Kirkstall. And from there you can walk right across viaduct and come out in Burley Park railway station.
In 1996, emergency services were called to put out a fire at Burley Park railway station in Leeds. When they arrived, they found it was the body of a young woman that had been set alight. Like Leanne, Deborah Wood's body was wrapped in bin liners and bedding. And like Leanne, she appeared to have been frozen.
It came on the local news. It just said that they found a body down Burley railway station. They said that all what were left was these red-fingered gloves. And then I know then it was my daughter, Deborah. I think about it every day. Who can do this thing? Take a precious daughter away from me. It's so evil, you know.
Linda lives in hope that if Taylor did kill her daughter, he might one day confess.
It's nearly 7 years and we still don't know who's done it. If they found someone, I will feel a lot better and be able to get on with my life.
It's not very nice sitting there knowing that somebody's actually done this to your child. I do feel a kind of connection with families that are actually in a position that I was in before they actually caught John Taylor. The fact that I actually know who killed Leanne didn't make things any easier for me. But then again, I suppose if I didn't know, I would be wanting to know. There were just the three of us, and we were just sort of like us against everybody else, if you like. Now it's just the two of us. It does feel a bit strange. I keep expecting a little voice piping up from the back saying, "Oh no, we don't want that, we want this." And it doesn't happen, and it's just funny, it's just strange. He took half of my life. My life's always been for my kids. I've always done everything I possibly could for them. And which it just makes it seem even more unfair that we had so little, but we always had each other, and he had to pick Leanne.
On February the 4th, 2003, John Taylor admitted being the Huffley Gill rapist. He was given a further 2 life sentences and will now end his days in prison. But the police won't forget about him.
We'll work as long and as hard as is necessary to uncover any other offences, serious offences, that he's committed. No stone will be left unturned as far as John Taylor's concerned. He should be answerable for any other serious matters that he may have committed.
But without further breakthroughs or a confession, there is no way of knowing how many lives Taylor's evil may have touched and how many secrets could lie buried in the woods.
Next, the playful child who turned into a twisted and unhinged killer with 6 rapes and 14 murders to his name before his capture aged just 25, Richard Ramirez.